one of the big things different between poker and trading is that in poker, you've got GTO, you can study the machines, right? You can study what the math and the simulations tell you is the exact move. You can't really do that in trading.
No.
How does that factor into your kind of career? Do you spend a lot of time buried in the Sims?
Yeah, I mean, I did for a long time there, but once you play versus real people, you realize that GTO is a good baseline to have, but then you kind of have to deviate based on who I'm playing, right? So it's good to know the baseline and understand how things work, but then you have to change based on, oh, if I'm playing this guy who's really good versus I'm playing this guy who is not very good, I'll play very differently versus two different people.
If one thing that I think about is if you've got two players, I mean, GTO is basically you're trying to play precisely to a computer-driven outcome, right? If
Right.
you've got two people doing the exact same thing, do you bounce off each other, or is that kind of where you try and find that sort of marginal edge? And how do you pick up on that if you know someone is as equally as good of a GTO studier as you or better? How do you manage that?
I mean, when you're playing versus a very good player, you just try to play GTO as possible. So when I'm playing high stakes, I'll just play pretty GTO. But realistically, no one plays like that. It's very hard for anyone to emulate that specifically. So there's rarely situations where you're gonna play it exactly because when you mess with the solver and try to like node lock certain things and change different outputs, if you change the smallest thing, it will reverse in another way where the output is completely different than GTO. So, and again, when you're playing versus humans, they don't really play GTO baseline at all. So you have to really, there's a lot of metagame involved in realizing, oh, you don't do this, so I'm going to do this. And it's just, it's a great game of like checkers, chess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the small changes that one makes, the small non-optimal changes have big reverberations outward. If you so that then creates an opportunity for you, which is if the opponent, but you also obviously don't want to make those mistakes. In trading, I feel like you look for some of those at scale where you see stock that looks totally out of whack, or you say, okay, this thing's a massive bubble. Sometimes it's in trading apparent, but it's oftentimes not. It'll be apparent if we find out, let's say, a company has been fraudulent, right? Then we know that stock's going to crash. What are the signs that you look for where you go, okay, this guy is not playing correct. This opponent is a broken computer.
Yeah. I mean, there's tilt in poker. That's a big thing where people they lose a big hand and they start to play crazy. And then, I mean, you can tell sometimes you see steam coming out of their ears, so it's an interesting game. You just really have to pay attention to the volatility of others and play based on that. So yeah.
It's interesting the way you frame that. Pay attention to the volatility of others. We spend a lot of time in the show thinking about volatility, ways to measure volatility. Um, are there key things that you see repeat often where you go, okay, this is a player that is on tilt or something? I feel like if I'm playing the 1-3 room, the encore on a popular vacation time, you're going to see pretty obvious tells. A guy's drinking,
Yeah.
somebody's there to have a good time. But when you're playing at the stakes that you're playing at and you're playing in final tables for massive, massive events, I can't imagine that there's a lot of leaks that are showing up.
Yeah, no, not really. When you're playing versus bad players, they lose a big pot, and then you can tell, you already know that it's about to happen. They're about to lose all their chips because they're going to try to make up for the losses that they just took. But when you're playing versus great players or when you get to a final table, usually the people that get to the final table are good, studied, and ready for the situation. So usually if they lose a big pot, they're not going to tilt as hard or change their strategy as bad as some.
You are right now currently playing an event that I think kind of speaks to your discipline as a poker player. It's everybody's dream to make final tables in WSOP, which you did. You cashed out. Hendon Mob has you at roughly $2 million for lifetime winnings. Hendon Mob being kind of the most standardized, popular way to track people's performance. I'm just pulling up your page right now. But what's interesting is you're still grinding and you're playing satellites to satellites, which is
Yeah.
basically like, let's say there's $1,000 game. You play a satellite for $100 and for every 10 people an entry. But you're playing like satellite to a satellite for a particular event. What does that say about you and kind of the way you approach managing your bankroll even after you've had big wins?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be able to use my wins for the long term. So I'm not trying to, I had a really good summer, won over $1 million. I'm not going to play $1 million buy-in. That would just be dumb. I wouldn't be able to last in the game of poker. So, I just want to be able to keep my risk low, play, sure, my bankroll has risen, but I want to be able to stay and play for 10, 20 years later down the road. So I can't be just playing crazy buy-ins and losing so much money that I can no longer be in the game.
Looking at last year, $1,500 millionaire maker, 316 grand. This was the big one though, $10,400 buy-in for the Win Summer Championship here. This is the classic, which you got fourth for almost a mil, 800K.
Yeah.
Can you give us an idea how you figure out the math for what your buy-ins are? Because obviously, you know, you didn't fire $1 million tournament, but right after you want a big payout in WSOP, then we see a $10,400 entry show up. Um, is that supported by investors, or is that, how do you kind of do the math on what you want to put in versus your winnings versus what others are willing to put in to support you, et cetera?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've played 10Ks before, so it wasn't like a extremely obscene thing, but it's not something I do often. It's usually only the better tournaments, the more value, the more bad players per se.
Uh-huh.
But so yeah, I sell action. And so if I'm playing like a $400 buy-in, I'll maybe sell 10% of myself just to lower the risk. But if I'm playing a $10,000 buy-in, I might sell 30 or 40% of myself in order to lower the risk. I don't really do exact math based on, they ABI is average buy-in. So they usually,
Okay.
some people try to keep the ABI the same based on their bankroll. I'm not really too into that. I kind of just go off the buying and try to kind of go off feel, honestly, which might not be the best decision, but it has been good so far. So yeah, I mean, I just try to be smart about it. The bigger the buy-in, the more I sell, and yeah.
The uh, Poker World now has staking apps people can use. When I think about what we're doing here with traders and different ways to trade and invest, have you thought about using those apps, and how popular are those? Do you think that's a real viable kind of investment kind of world emerging? This is the show is Future of Finance. Is that a realm that you see as kind of a viable pathway for poker players and other gamblers to kind of distribute wins and losses?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's great for the buyer. It's great for the seller. You just have to find good value, good players, and figure out what works for both sides. For me personally, I have like 3 or 4 guys that just buy everything. So I personally don't use the apps, but I know a ton of friends that use them and use them for every tournament they play, and it's great for them.
One thing I noticed looking at the that Win Summer Classic last year is, correct me if I'm wrong, but, and I don't know if you still are, but Faraz Jaka here at 12th, was a mentor, a coach of yours to some extent?
He was one of my first coaches I had.
Okay.
Yeah, he was one of the first coaches, and then I went to a more one-on-one coach with my buddy Fausto Valdez. Um, and I think having one-on-one coaches versus a coach like Faraz is amazing. He's a great coach,
Mhm.
but he kind of just makes videos for the masses versus having a one-on-one coach. You kind of get a little more intel on your specific game versus just a broad aspect of poker players. So yeah.
Mentorship is a big topic here, and a lot of these traders have had mentors. Scott Bauer, who's running the event here, has been a trading mentor of mine. How important is it to have someone in poker, or how much do you think you can really do it on your own? Is it absolutely kind of necessary to have someone to say, hey, I know you're looking at Sims, you're doing this, but I've been to this event, I know how this place works, the kind of tailored sort of, I've been there before, trust me, don't pound your head against the wall. How big of a role does that play?
It's huge. I mean, just having friends to, hey, I just played this hand. I'm not quite sure how I played it. How would you have played it differently? So having well-respected peers around you to bounce hands off of, bounce ideas off of, and kind of ask for coaching in a sense, like, hey, do you like what I did here? How would you play it? It's really helpful, honestly. And, having respect for those who you ask is key too, because obviously I'm not going to ask someone I don't respect their poker game. I'm not going to ask for their support or opinion,
Right.
but versus someone who, like a coach or someone who's really strong or has been there, done that, I'm gonna ask for their opinion and really respect it.
Back to bankroll management and tracking. This is a big thing for traders as well, which is tracking, monitoring your trades, what succeeded, what worked, what didn't. I think for any type of speculation, professional speculation, whether it's trading, gambling, poker, is monitoring, when your red turns black. And I feel like for a lot of people, especially as you're learning, seeing it make that transition where, okay, I've been losing money trading, or I've been losing money playing cards. Now I'm making money. How do you track that, and how important is that? Do you have that as kind of a key part of your process, or after you get a couple big wins, you're like, all right, I know what I'm doing. I don't need to keep track of every buy and every, percent win
Yeah, yeah.
ROI.
No, I mean, I definitely keep track of everything, especially location. I feel like, especially because online, there's so many places to play. There's infinite amount of places to play. So I think keeping track of how you're doing on each of those type of locations is big too. Because say I'm losing huge here, but winning huge here, I should probably stop playing here and keep playing here.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how I use the tracking. Where okay, I'm doing great. I'm going to continue to do this, and that's all it is with poker. It's just showing up and the volume and continue to make the right decisions at each point. You're going to lose sometimes. You're going to make the right decision and it's not going to go right. You're going to make the wrong decision and it's going to go right. So just kind of having the humility to realize what is the correct play long term. And that's all we can really do as a poker player.
One other thing I want to make sure to get into, which has some pretty direct ties to trading and investing, but is a pretty specific part of poker. We might lose some people who are kind of casual players, but if you think about tournament play and where the money is made in tournaments, which is where you're a professional tournament player, the payout structure for tournaments is very much convex.
Sure.
All the money's at the top, it drops off real quickly. And because of that, you generally have a lot of entries and a lot of losses, but then when you do win, you win really big.
Right.
For a lot of that, I think the overlap for trading is people putting on a lot of volume, where it seems like volume is a big part of it, but you also don't necessarily have to play that. You could be a cash player. You could find an in between. Basically, what we're talking about is variance, right?
Right.
Variance being a big part of investing, variance being a big part of cards. How do you know whether you're being subjected to bad variance or playing bad?
That's a great question. And that goes back to, having coaches or peers and asking them what the best decision is. But I mean, with poker, it's just, there's so many different stages of the tournament where like, say you're on the bubble and that min cash is great, but so you want to get the min cash because it's either zero or you double your buy-in. But then you have the other stage of you really want to make it to the final table because that's where all the money is.
Right.
So you kind of have to change your play style as the tournament progresses. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you just have to run with the variance. And again, all we can do as poker players is put the chips in when we think it's the right decision to be made, and that's about it.
If you're concerned about making the min cash, if that's important to you, should you be playing that tournament?
I mean, if I make this cash, I can not pay my rent. No, but
Right.
if you're playing a tournament and you get to that situation, sometimes you have to fold a really good hand. Sometimes you just have to. There's the the aspect you get of doubling your stack on the bubble versus losing and being out is just not worth it. And so that's kind of where the risk management comes into play, where it's like, okay, is this worth it? Is it not worth it? And you kind of have to self-solve the situation as it goes, which makes poker a really fun game because there's so many different aspects and different things that go on throughout the tournament.
How do you think about your preference on both the style of play and the concept of variance as it applies to tournaments, cash, or PLO? Because I feel like if you think about no limit, obviously a lot more variance in tournaments. But if you think about kind of PLO, I've kind of found as an in between where you've got variance, but if you're used to playing, multi-table tournaments, PLO variance is a little bit, in a cash format, it's a little bit more familiar. It's manageable.
Yeah.
But still generally cash being a lower kind of variance play than tournaments. I think there's a lot of analogs for investing too, where if you just kind of buy and hold stocks, that's kind of your cash play, collecting premium, if you will. A lot of traders collect premium. And when you're raising blinds, when you're playing position in cash, you're kind of just collecting premium. Whereas in tournaments, you're really going for that big asymmetric payout. What is your preference in kind of those three categories of cash, tournaments, and then how do you think about PLO on the variance spectrum?
So for just poker in general, for me, there's the difference between cash game and tournament play, like the strategy is very different.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I've only studied 2-card, no limit hold'em tournaments. So I kind of stick to that. As far as cash, I do it when it's fun or if the game's good, if there's a lot of bad players in it or if there's a lot of money to be made. So yeah, I kind of just go off of what I think is the best decision to be made in all aspects, to play the tournament, to play the cash game, what hands to play. And yeah.
The kind of final point is, do you think about poker as gambling?
I do not. No, I do not. There's decisions to be made. And if you are studied and if you know what the correct decision is, sure, you're going to have the bad variance and you're going to lose when you make the right decision. But in the long term, the goal is to go up. And so as long as you're making the correct decision and not gambling per se to playing bad hands and trying to do things that are negative EV, then yeah, I mean, I don't think it's gambling at all.
It's the only game in the casino where you don't have to play the house.
Right.
So in theory, right, and math too, based, then you kind of have your only thing that's not gambling.
Right.
Do you play any other things for fun? If you get a nice win and you and your wife celebrate, grab a drink, something on the way to casino, do you have a preferred gamble game?
I dabble in Ultimate Texas Hold'em, unfortunately.
Okay, that's the least fun one out of the.
Yeah, I don't like
What
blackjack.
about
I don't
Mississippi
like
Stud?
roulette. No, I've never even played
No
that.
stud? I think it. Oh, I got.
I don't even know how to play that game.
It's not too hard. I think that's the best gamble game for a poker player.
Really?
Well, because the ultimate Texas Hold'em is
It's pretty boring, to be fair. But
Right.
there is also in that game, you know what the right decision is. There's charts and there's math and
yeah.
so it's pretty easy on my part.
There's usually only one Mississippi Stud table if you're lucky too, which I think is a sign that the house doesn't love it. Sports? Any interest in sports gambling for fun?
I dabble, unfortunately, as well.
Okay, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I am a Lions fan. I'm a Suns fan, so
Unfortunately.
yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah, so I'll bet on those sometimes. But yeah, I try to stay away, just because that's gambling, and I have a son, I have a family, and so I
Yeah.
have to be pretty smart about how I work with my money. Yeah, I have a surplus or whatever, but it could all go away super quick. So you got to be smart about it.
Jonah, fun conversation. Congrats on the wins.
Thank you.
Congrats on the family. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you for having
stuff.
me.
Yeah, very fun. And you're welcome for the donations in the home leagues, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Keep them
Maybe
coming.